Hi, everyone. In this session, what I want to try and do is highlight to you how important the Navy, the Department of Defense, and our government generally, how important they believe it is that we focus a lot of attention on ethical behavior, moral decision making, and how we can try and build our own sense of ethics. It is important enough, as I said in my cover notes to this week's class, that the Navy decided to establish a whole separate college on leadership in which a lot of the effort is on ethical behavior. And you'd have to really have your head pretty far in the sand not to understand that scandals such as Fat Leonard and other lapses in ethical behavior are really detrimental to the mission of the Navy, the mission of the Department of Defense, and our standing across the world. So I want you to try and understand these items as we go forward and look at this brief overview of this week's sessions. So this slide really just tries to give you some idea of what we're going to try and accomplish in this week's session and why we believe that it's important. So we worry about that in some sense. And the reason I put personal ethics first is that I don't think you can do any of the other stuff unless you have your own sense of personal ethics and that you work on it. It's not something that you get. It's not something that you can have instilled in your being at one point in time and then carry forever. Certainly, I have to say that my parents installing a sense of personal ethics was incredibly important to me. But that isn't the end of it. The end of it is what we do with all of that and how we continue to develop our own sense of ethical behavior. And then the others follow through from it. The way we deal with others, the way we work, and ultimately, I suppose, the way we understand the ideas of right and wrong, I believe at least, all come from what our personal ethics might be. So there are a whole series of things that we can think about as we look at a moral worldview, if you will. And this slide tries to go through and say, look, there are things that you have to consider as you go through in terms of how things go. And there are ways in which you consider it. And I'm not trying to suggest to you, that would be foolish, I think. So I'm not trying to suggest to you that any of these is particularly correct, but I would like you to try and understand what it is that you have in yourself to try and deal with the world around you. And these scales, I think, will try and help you understand where it is that you have to deal in terms of how you look at the world, how you come to choices, and how you look at how you behave in private versus how you behave in public. And I think all of those are important for us to think about. The idea that you can, and I said this in the earlier slide, that you can simply be moral and that's it, you're done, you don't have to worry about it anymore, strikes me as really kind of short-sighted. And I would like to try and focus on the last bullet here. And I think that if you cannot be ethical yourself, the odds are that you are not going to be, in fact, not only the odds, the overwhelming odds are that it's going to be almost impossible for you to be a good leader. It'll be impossible to build a decent team. And indeed, you won't be able to be successful in the world at large. I think Dwight Eisenhower has it right. So what I want to close with, the sort of takeaways, are the idea that you yourselves can do a lot to try and make the world a better place by simply understanding what your own sense of ethics are and how you will behave in the world. And I want to emphasize that how you behave is going to have a lot to say about how your organizations behave, and how you behave and how you reflect on the successes and failures you have in life, and we all will have our share of both, will have a lot to say about how we deal with any of those in an ethical kind of way. I think that you'll find the readings on this to be really quite interesting, and I think you'll find that they will inspire you, or at least I hope they will inspire you, to consider how you try and look at your own set of ethical skills.